Welcome back to the Survival Historian, where we navigate the shadows between endurance and history, where survival isn't always measured in rations and shelter, but in the resilience of the human mind itself. Think you can spot a lie? Can you tell when someone is trying to subtly control your every decision? Today, we're stepping into a battlefield where no bullets fly, no bombs fall, yet casualties mount all the same. We're diving deep into the insidious mind games that master spies perfected during World War II, techniques designed to manipulate emotions, sow distrust, and ultimately break even the strongest wills. After watching this, you'll never look at human interaction the same way again. This is psychological warfare at its most devastating, where the weapon is the mind and the battleground is the soul. In the covert operations of World War II, intelligence agencies on all sides understood a fundamental truth. The most powerful weapon isn't steel or explosives, but information paired with psychological manipulation. While soldiers fought in trenches and skies, another war raged in smoky interrogation rooms, in carefully orchestrated meetings at neutral cafes, and in the lonely bedrooms of compromised officials. The spies of the Second World War weren't just gathering secrets. They were architects of perception, sculptors of reality itself. They operated in that twilight realm where truth becomes malleable, where a whispered word could topple governments and a carefully planted doubt could unravel entire intelligence networks. The Abwehr, MI6, OSS, and NKVD all recognized that controlling how someone thinks is far more valuable than controlling what they know. This was survival of the most psychologically astute, and the stakes couldn't have been higher. False flag operations became the signature move of wartime espionage, and their execution required theatrical precision. British intelligence orchestrated Operation Mincemeat, dressing a corpse as a Royal Marines officer and planting false invasion plans on the body, which washed ashore in Nazi-occupied Spain. The Germans, convinced by this elaborate deception, diverted crucial forces away from Sicily, the actual Allied target. But the real genius wasn't in the physical setup. It was in understanding Nazi psychology, knowing exactly which details would pass scrutiny and which emotional triggers would compel belief. The operation succeeded because it exploited the German High Command's existing anxieties and their desperate need to predict Allied movements. Meanwhile, gaslighting emerged as perhaps the most insidious psychological weapon in the spy's arsenal. Imagine being a German officer approached by what appears to be a fellow Nazi sympathizer, someone who gradually introduces small contradictions into your reports, who questions orders you swear you received, who makes you doubt conversations you distinctly remember having. Over weeks and months, your confidence erodes. You begin second-guessing yourself, becoming paralyzed by uncertainty. Your superiors notice your hesitation, your mistakes. You're removed from sensitive positions, isolated, vulnerable, and that's exactly when the real extraction of information begins. The British double-cross system perfected this, turning captured German agents and using them to feed carefully crafted falsehoods back to Berlin, manipulating Nazi intelligence decisions at the highest levels. Intelligence operatives during World War II became expert psychologists, identifying the hairline fractures in a person's armor. They understood that everyone has needs for connection, validation, purpose, security, and that deprivation of these needs creates exploitable desperation. The infamous honey trap operations honestly exemplified this ruthless pragmatism. Soviet intelligence particularly excelled at identifying lonely diplomats, ideologically conflicted officials, or financially desperate military personnel. Consider the case of a mid-level American embassy official in wartime Moscow, separated from family, drowning in classified tedium, and well susceptible to the warm attention of an attractive Russian woman who just happens to share his interests. The relationship develops naturally, intimately. Photographs are taken, compromising positions documented. Then comes the revelation, the blackmail, the impossible choice between personal destruction and betrayal. But the manipulation didn't end with recruitment. Handlers cultivated genuine emotional dependence through a technique now recognized as love bombing, overwhelming targets with validation, affection, and manufactured understanding. They mirrored their targets' values, politics, and interests so precisely that victims felt they'd finally found someone who truly understood them. This psychological mirroring lowered defenses more effectively than any threat could. Simultaneously, handlers worked to isolate targets from existing support networks, planting seeds of suspicion about colleagues and friends, and becoming the sole source of trust and information. The victim's reality became what the handler defined it to be. When subtlety failed, psychological warfare turned to direct assault on mental resilience. Sleep deprivation became a standard interrogation technique precisely because it attacks the foundation of cognitive function without leaving marks. Gestapo interrogators would subject resistance fighters to relentless questioning in shifts, keeping prisoners awake for days until their minds began fragmenting, until they could no longer distinguish truth from fabrication, until compliance seemed the only escape from the waking nightmare. The NKVD took this further, combining sleep deprivation with sensory manipulation, bright lights, temperature extremes, disorienting sounds, creating an environment where the prisoner's own mind became their enemy. Isolation proved equally devastating. Solitary confinement in the dank cells beneath Gestapo headquarters or Soviet Lubyanka prison didn't just remove social contact, it severed prisoners from any external validation of reality. Without human interaction, the mind turns inward, spiraling into doubt and despair. Interrogators exploited this vulnerability, becoming the only human contact, the only voice in the darkness. Prisoners began craving their interrogator's presence, developing a perverse dependence on their tormentor, a phenomenon later termed Stockholm Syndrome. The resistance fighter, who endured weeks of isolation, might maintain ideological purity, but their psychological foundation crumbled, making them vulnerable to more subtle manipulations. These methods didn't require physical torture to break someone. They weaponized the prisoner's own mind against them, turning mental processes into instruments of self-destruction. The psychological tactics pioneered in World War II didn't vanish with the peace treaties. They evolved, adapted, and found new battlegrounds. Today's intelligence operations employ the same fundamental principles, but with technological amplification that would absolutely astound wartime spy masters. Social engineering attacks exploit the same human vulnerabilities: trust, curiosity, authority, that honey traps once leveraged, but now they operate through screens rather than cafes. Deepfake technology represents gaslighting at scale, capable of making people doubt even video evidence of reality. Disinformation campaigns spread through social media echo the false flag operations of 1940s espionage. But, now they reach billions instantly instead of targeting just single officials. The isolation tactics, once requiring physical imprisonment, now manifest digitally as algorithms create filter bubbles that separate us from alternative viewpoints, making us increasingly dependent on single information sources. Understanding these historical mind games offers crucial survival knowledge for our modern world. Recognizing love bombing helps identify manipulative relationships, whether from potential recruiters or toxic partners. Awareness of gaslighting protects against those who would make you doubt your own perceptions. Knowledge of elicitation techniques prevents inadvertent information disclosure in seemingly casual conversations. The spies of World War II understood that the human mind, for all its resilience, contains predictable vulnerabilities. They mapped the psychology of manipulation with clinical precision, leaving a legacy that reminds us The most dangerous battlefield isn't terrain you can see, but the contested ground between your ears. Survival, whether in wartime or peacetime, demands psychological awareness as much as physical preparedness. It requires recognizing when someone is playing mind games, understanding the tactics, and honestly maintaining mental resilience against manipulation. The soldiers of that generation survived not just through their physical courage, but through their ability to resist psychological assault, to maintain core identity despite everything designed to break them. That's a lesson worth remembering. If you found these psychological insights as fascinating and unsettling as we did, make sure to hit that like button and share this video with anyone who needs to understand how manipulation really works. Subscribe to The Survival Historian and ring that notification bell, because we're continuing to explore where history's darkest tactics meet modern survival awareness. Remember, understanding the mind games of the past is your best defense against the manipulations of the present. Stay vigilant, stay informed, and stay resilient. Until next time, this is The Survival Historian, reminding you that true survival starts in the mind.